I don't demand happy endings, but I'm not clamoring for tearjerkers either. More than anything else, a story should simply make sense. Twists should be foreshadowed, and the endgame of characters should satisfy their journeys. I say all that to say that my take for today's video, it's grim, but only because I feel like it made the most writing sense, and that was to not have Zane survive. For those who didn't watch Season 4 of GX or just need a refresher, Zane has managed to survive his heart giving out in Season 3 and washes up on the shores of Duel Academy. Unfortunately, his body is in such decline that he's wheelchair bound and can't duel at full power. So why exactly did they bring him back? Zane plays no role in the Night Shroud plot, so that leaves only the role he plays in wrapping up the development of Cyrus, his younger brother, and the arc between them. Season 4 is all about sending the main characters off to the post-Duel Academy chapter of their lives, but Cyrus has spent his years at Duel Academy in Zane's and even Jaden's shadow. Cyrus's ascent is a slow burn over the course of the anime and finally comes to a head with the introduction of Makoto, a duelist of the Jinzo art and rival to the Cyber art of which Zane is a practitioner. After he defeats the head of the Cyber Dojo, Chancellor Shepard, he comes after Zane next. However, Zane is unable to finish the duel due to his condition. Enter Cyrus. By having Cyrus defeat Makoto, the anime demonstrates how far he has come from the kid who didn't know how to use Power Bond. Paired this with the fact that Cyrus uses Zane's deck, showing his prowess with the Cyber art, but he also combines it with elements of his own, showing that he has stepped out from his brother's shadow and developed his own dueling identity. The cherry on top is the line that is the bane of all Zane fans' existence, where Zane tells Cyrus that he has surpassed him. This comes from a guy who for the longest time showed little interest in his brother, or at least confidence in his dueling skill. The two ultimately embark on creating their own pro league, which for Zane is an acknowledgement of Cyrus as a true partner, and for Cyrus, it is a welcome end to a beginning that was marred by a distant relationship from his brother that he longed to mend. With the thought process of the anime narrative explained, now is the time to dismantle it. Zane starts off Yu-Gi-Oh! GX as the big man on campus, and despite Jaden's upstartness in taking down everybody he duels, is the first to defeat Jaden. This immediately gives Jaden a bar to reach, and for the viewers clearly shows Zane is the best duelist. Even after Jaden improves throughout the season, taking down the likes of Amnel and the dude wielding the 3 Sacred Beasts, Jaden still only draws with Zane, signifying just how great Zane is. Zane is a very chill dude, but he takes the game seriously, respects the cards and his opponents, and the only time he puts winning on hold is when he must throw the duel to Camula to save his brother. In Season 2, Zane starts off his pro career with 10 straight wins before finally stepping up to Aster Phoenix. While Zane thinks he has the duel won, Aster counters and wins, and all of a sudden, Zane is sent spiraling. He can't buy a win and has to resort to underground dueling and shot callers to so desperately quench his thirst for winning. From here, his personality flips from respectful and mindful duels to dude just wanting to rack up W's no matter what comes to his opponents or cards. The surface level interpretation of Zane is that he represents the child prodigy who goes out into the real world, gets his butt kicked, and can't quite process it, so he becomes a deranged lunatic whose sole purpose is to win duels because that's all he's ever known. While the first half of that is undoubtedly true, especially given Zane's own acknowledgement that he is already perfect and thus has no room to grow, I mean, what kind of 18-year-old says that about themselves? The second half of that assessment ignores what Zane goes on to become after his initial rampage. Yes, it's true. Zane loses it. He duels with shot callers like some masochist and fueled by the pain. He even forces his brother to take part in this electric boogaloo, but when Season 3 rolls around, Zane is all of a sudden somewhere between his chill vibe in Season 1 and deranged lunatic Season 2. This change in Zane isn't explicitly explained, but we can chart it, starting from his duel with Cyrus in Season 2, where he is fully obsessed with victory and doesn't respect the cards or duelist any longer, saying so himself that he'll become tainted and doesn't care what anyone says about him. We then briefly see him standing over another Obelisk Blue student he has just defeated before he's confronted by Blair. But at this point, Zane says Gen X isn't worth his time and he only desires a pure victory over a worthy opponent. The fact that he says he won't find that on the island is incredibly fascinating given that the guy who just most recently beat him, Aster, and the guy he himself says has infinite potential, Jaden, are both on said island. Keep this in mind as we move forward. The next time we see Zane is when he duels Jesse across dimensions. A couple of times during this duel, he's impressed by Jesse's skill, citing his infinite potential, but he's still very much interested in getting that crushing victory. Unfortunately for Zane, the duel abruptly ends when the connection severs, but that's what pushes him to want to go to Dimension World himself. As he states, he wants to face the ultimate opponent, and he finds that when he comes face to face with Jesse, stating that he crossed multiple dimensions to meet that ultimate opponent he must fight. It is during this duel when the change really starts to materialize in Zane's words and actions. This is made clear when he says, "Until now, the only meaning I found was in victory, but now I've freed myself from that obsession. I became the Hell Kaiser and wandered through hell, and now at last I feel neither joy in victory nor fear at loss. I just want this one moment to shine, and I have achieved that." So what exactly flipped between him first arriving in Dimension World looking for that victory over the ultimate opponent to not caring about the result of the duel at all? There's two things. First, remember earlier when I mentioned how Zane didn't think Aster or Jaden was worthy of dueling? This same notion applies here. He came to Dimension World looking for the ultimate opponent, he learns of Supreme King Jaden, and yet when Axel says he wants to duel him, Zane says, "Yeah, that's cool, you can have him." To me, this is the first indication that Zane has started to realize that someone who gives into their inner darkness can never achieve their highest potential, which is incredibly important to Zane because his desire to duel was at its peak when dueling the two dudes in whom he saw that infinite potential, Jaden and Jesse. The seed of this was planted in his brief duel with Jesse, which is why he at this point would prefer to finish his duel with Jesse rather than take on Dark Jaden. Second is relatively small, but clearly has a profound impact on Zane. After his brief duel with Jaden, Crowler praises him for putting his life on the line to try and pull Jaden from his funk, but Zane quickly dismisses this, saying his motives are not magnanimous. Magnanimous. Adjective. Generous or forgiving, especially toward a rival or less powerful person. Synonyms include generous, benevolent, big-hearted, and noble. What we need to understand at this point here is that Zane is still just looking for that pure victory over a worthy opponent. But then Crowler says something else in the next episode. Until the final instant, a man must live his life to the fullest. That is a man's right and his mission. Well, I said that very grandly, but I suppose it is not convincing at all. Except it is very convincing, as we'll soon see. Yes, it's quick, but again, clearly a profound impact on Zane because just moments later as he stares down Jesse, he says, "Even if I have no future, I must live this moment to its fullest. Isn't that right, instructor?" You're still a fine teacher, Instructor Kronos. You made me remember my objective, to fight the ultimate duel against the ultimate opponent. That is my objective in life. Notice here the change in his wording from when he was confronted by Blair to now. Back in Season 2, the operative word was victory, but now he just wants to duel. It is these two things that I believe flipped Zane, and beyond his words, we see this in two of his actions. The first, which was acknowledging that darkness doesn't support one's potential by preferring to duel Jesse over Supreme King Jaden, is manifested in how Zane uses his pure Cyber Dragon deck as opposed to the Cyber Dark deck that has become emblematic of his dark way of dueling. He understands that in order to attain the biggest shine possible, he needs to do so without darkness dimming him. The second action is his use of Power Bond. Remember way back in episode 7 when Cyrus had a flashback of Zane telling him he wasn't worthy of using Power Bond because he didn't understand the risk behind it? This came from a place of making the most optimal move for the sake of winning. While Zane wasn't victory hungry in Season 1 in his childhood like he was in Season 2, winning still very much came to him naturally, so he wouldn't make a risky move like Power Bond unless it guaranteed him victory or had a way around the damage. And yet, in this duel, he activates Power Bond despite Yubel Jesse having a face down to potentially counter, knowing that if his attack doesn't go through, like Cyrus's wouldn't have due to Spellbinding Circle, that he will lose the duel due to the risk of Power Bond. Except now, Zane understands that victory doesn't matter, losing doesn't matter. All that matters is that he feels the shine of this moment and lasts for eternity. Little tangent here, but this is the reason why I disagree with folks saying he should have just had a Joey-like moment against Merrick, where instead of Cybernetic Zone, he has limiter removal but his heart gives out before dealing the final blow. To me, this duel truly was not about winning. Zane has to lose this duel in order to complete his arc, but what's important is that he loses on his own terms, using his signature card and with the backdrop of his signature monster behind him. Just before departing, Zane says, "This is the final end which awaits those who duel only for power, a momentary joy. This is the conclusion to which I have come after living through hell." What he is acknowledging here is that all those victories he was racking up as Hell Kaiser were like the shock collars, a nice little jolt of dopamine but temporary every time, and ultimately adding up to something more damaging than rewarding. Crowler's words, however, reminded him that the permanent happiness is in living life to the fullest, irrespective of the outcome. And his assessment of Season 1 Jaden and then Season 3 Jesse as having infinite potential showed him that darkness isn't compatible with that shine. This is the character arc of Zane, a standout in his school who couldn't grapple with losing and thus turned to his dark side, but despite returning to victory, couldn't find true happiness until he realized that dueling is more than wins and losses. It is about putting forth his best. As the once top dog of his school, other students may have looked to him as a role model for his unblemished record, but as he passes away with 3 underclassmen surrounding him, including his younger brother, he knows that despite his loss, the duel he just put forth is the one most worth modeling. Zane's arc is undeniably a powerful one, but his coming back in Season 4 diminishes a lot of it. First is the very fact that he lived, and the second is who he is now. As for why the reversal of his demise diminishes the impact of his arc, Zane, again, is meant to be a role model for the rest of Duel Academy. He fulfills this role by showing how one should be, as well as how one shouldn't be. As Zane passes, Jaden says that he will pick up that legacy by shining brighter than Zane did, showing that Jaden will walk the path of what one should be, as opposed to the path of what one shouldn't be. By keeping Zane alive, it diminishes the legacy impact of his shining moment. As for who he is now, listen, I get that Zane has been through a lot. I don't expect him to fully recover right away, and so I don't take too much issue with him being unable to finish his duel with Makoto. But his words, man, like, you are the literal peaked in high school dude through Season 2, and now you go say something like, I'll never manage a better duel than that. So I guess he peaked in Dimension World, which is fine, maybe, but don't say that, you numbnut. Eventually, Zane changes course after seeing Cyrus take down Makoto, saying, I believe that we and duels still have the potential to evolve. This time, I'll be the one to catch up to you. That's better. I get he's your brother and you're proud of him, but then he just vanishes. If his final moment was the shining moment, then he would have gone out on top. But now he's just kind of sort of fading into obscurity to the point that an arguably top 5 duelist of the show doesn't even get a crack at Truman. This fading contradicts his shining, which is why bringing him back doesn't work for his arc. It's akin to how when an all-time legendary athlete keeps playing past his prime. Yeah, you can still fondly remember his greatness, but now you get this weird aftertaste and you keep watching the old seasons trying to relive what he used to be, but in your heart deep down, you know this guy will never be the same. After understanding his character arc, it's difficult to come to terms with the fact that his best moment wasn't his final moment. So that's my thoughts on the matter. What do you think? Should Zane have not survived, or if you like that they kept him alive, how would you have changed his role in Season 4? Let me know in the comments, and make sure you like, share, and subscribe for more content like this in the future.